So here's where this all leads us to, because, I don't want to, we talk a lot about the hypocrisy and stuff. It leads to people finally having enough. We got this story from the Daily Mail. 50 maskless anti-lockdown protesters force their way into LA supermarket after California extends regional stay-at-home order indefinitely amid 1,000% spike in hospitalizations. They say police responded to calls about an unruly crowd at the Erewhon Market in LA's Fairfax district on Tuesday afternoon. Dozens of maskless people were filmed shoving their way into the store. The protesters berated staffers, demanding that they cover their faces. Wait, what? We just want to shop. We want to take our own precautions that we've been doing all our lives, and we'll all be fine, an organizer of the demonstration said. The incident came as Governor Gavin Newsom extended stay-at-home order in the Southern California region. LA County has become one of the nation's worst hotspots in recent weeks. Hospitalizations in the county have grown tenfold in the last 2 months. So check out this photo. I mean, you guys can't see it, but for those that are watching, you can. It says a crowd of about 50 maskless anti-lockdown protesters shoving their way into a store. You got a lot of people, man. I'll tell you. I don't know if you remember seeing the videos from earlier in the year of the stores being stripped clean. I mean, First of all, toilet paper was first to go. I think my favorite video was when everyone runs full speed and they're wrestling over toilet paper. It's so weird, man. Like, if you're worried, I guess they weren't worried about the pandemic. They're just worried about wiping their butts for real. All right. You know what? I'd run for the food and the bottled water. Like if everyone breaks for the toilet paper, I'm gonna go get some produce and some canned goods. I don't know. But anyway, I digress. The other day we heard a lady beat a cop with her own baton because she was told to wear a mask. A Navy vet bashed a guy at a bar over the head with a bottle for being told to wear a mask. Now you've got these people storming their way into a supermarket saying we want to shop. So what happens when people start running out of food? Because it's going to happen. I mean, people aren't working. California is making the lockdown crazier. You combine that with the hypocrisy. You combine that with people who earlier in the year were saying one thing and doing another, and now they've flipped 180. And if you repeat the same thing the Surgeon General said earlier this year about masks, or Fauci did, they'll nuke you. They'll get rid of your account. They'll get rid of your channel. If you say it's xenophobic to ban travel, you're gone. But they said all of that. When they decide it, and it's not even Republicans, it's mostly Democrats. When they decide to say it, it's fine, no matter what it is they say. That's where we're at right now. People can see that, you've got Murphy in New Jersey went out to eat and got harassed by, or you got berated by some people. You've got Whitmer went to get her hair cut, Lori Lightfoot. You've got Nancy Pelosi. You got Newsom violating COVID lockdowns. I wonder, these people, their loved ones are dying. They can't go out and they can't see them. They can't be in the hospital with them. Their children are being born, can't be in the hospital with them either. I've seen tons of comments from people saying, my parent or, grandparent has been in the hospital with cancer or some illness, and it's been weeks and they're deteriorating. No one can see them or visit them. And then what do we get? The politicians are breaking their own rules. Dr. Birx on the task force violates COVID restrictions the advice she's given, goes visits her family, takes photos. And then insult to injury. The nurses get on camera and choreograph dances and shuffle about in a place where people are dying en masse. Eventually, I think the people are going to kick the doors into these supermarkets, just start taking stuff. And it's probably going to get crazier than that. People are going to start this law is going to start breaking down. Yeah, I mean, it already is.
Well, there's when I'm talking with somebody and we're sharing opinions, people can get, passionate about it, but still you're just met with it. An opinion doesn't really go off the rails when you're talking about it. But when somebody's beliefs are challenged, emotions flare up. So I think what's actually happening is these people are finally discovering that, we held a belief that we're a country of people, we're decent, we're hardworking. We have this American dream story, right? And that our leaders are really there for us, in some way, I guess, went deep down. But COVID has stripped something bare, which is that our leaders don't care at all about us. And probably the most shocking, grotesque display, and there have been many, has to be this most recent stimulus bill, right? $600 for everybody earning $75,000 or less, right? So that you add it up, that's about $90 billion out of 900. That's 10% going to people, right? Who have been out of work for months after months after months after months. So what do you do with $600 after you've been out of work for 8 months? Not a lot, right? Do you pay your overdue cable bill or your cell phone, or what do you do with that, right? Yeah. And then they put 90% of that goes to Israel and Egypt.
1.3 billion is going to Egypt. 700 million is going to Sudan. 453 million is going to Ukraine, and then 500 million is going to Israel.
To just clarify, 200 billion of the 2.3 trillion dollar omnibus is going to be dispersed as stimulus payments. The next 700, there's 700. I'm sorry, is that 200 billion? And then there's 700 billion that's going to be dispersed in other kinds of like economic relief, like the Paycheck Protection Program and things like that. Then you get the omnibus spending bill, which was a ton of it is like general spending programs, but a lot of them are ridiculous. Like what's the lizards on treadmills or whatever, and the Pakistani gender programs. I don't care what the number is. We're at a point where our economy has been decimated. When we're unable to work and survive, why would you give any money? Could you imagine? Let me just give you an analogy. Could you imagine you get fired from your job, right? And you've got a savings of a couple grand and your rent is like $1,000 a month. And you're like, well, I can probably last about 2 months. I'm going to give my money to my neighbor. He seems hungry. Or you're going to be like, I'm going to give away $1,000 of my money from my savings so my neighbor can take a gender studies class at the local college.
Uh-huh.
Who in their right mind would do that?
When they said a 2.3 trillion we're going to get, does that mean that we are going to borrow 2.3 trillion from the Federal Reserve?
So the run rate of their spend right now is run rate on an annualized basis close to 10 trillion, and total income is around 4. So they're spending. Not all of that will be borrowed. Some of that comes in income taxes. Some of it comes in Social Security taxes, FICA, stuff like that. But by far the majority of it's being borrowed right now.
Do you know how much of it's being borrowed?
But like, who does it get borrowed from? How do they borrow it?
Well, the Treasury conducts an auction, and this is a very simple magician trick, right? The Federal Reserve is not directly monetizing debt because that would be Banana Republic. So what happens is one of the 23 primary dealers, J.P. Morgan, et cetera, they go in and they buy these things, and then the Federal Reserve buys it from them. And, of course, they take a little cut, a little skim, a couple basis points to take a little vig. So that's how it works. But if you follow the action, the Federal Reserve is literally buying fresh U.S. paper the same day in many cases, right? So it's just one step to make it look like it's not what it is, which is the Federal Reserve prints money out of thin air and our government spends it.
Yep.
So
Sounds like a Ponzi scheme.
Well, so what's the long-term effect of that?
The long-term effect is money is, let's be clear, money is just it's a social agreement. Mm-hmm. It's a claim on something. There's that the paper in Luke's notebook, we say is just paper, but this other paper has value, or these ones and zeros on this hard disk mean this, but not that over there. So money is just this thing that we all agree has value. The long-term effect of just printing is you take from everybody. Last time I went to the grocery store, first time I ever had a $500 grocery bill, right? And I could easily carry the whole thing, right? And they tell me constantly, there's no inflation, but I know there is. And my health care, which I have to buy as a small business owner, it goes up reliably 10, 20% every year.
Let me tell everybody a trick you can do right now. Go on to Amazon.com, select some electronics, put them into your cart, and then don't buy them. Close the browser. Come back in a week. You'll get a notification. Happened to me. I was going to buy a tablet, and I forgot. Opened it up a day or two later, and it said price change, $500 to $650. Mm-hmm. The cost went up.
To clarify how we're borrowing this money, so the U.S. government will be like, we're going to borrow $1 trillion from the Federal Reserve, but what they'll do is the Federal Reserve will loan $1 trillion to J.P. Morgan, or one of 23 banks, middlemen, and then the bank will loan it to the U.S. government?
Not exactly like that. So the Treasury Department puts out, let's say, $1 trillion of Treasury bills, right? 3-year notes, 5-year notes, 10-year notes, whatever they are, 30-day bills. But they put $1 trillion out, and then people bid for them in these competitive auctions. Almost all of that goes to these big banks. The big banks are buying it with cash they have kicking around, most of which they got from the Federal Reserve, different mechanism. But that's real cash. And then the Federal Reserve takes real cash and wires it into their accounts and takes those assets, those debt instruments, off their hands.
So the Federal Reserve is holding a bunch of U.S. Treasury bills?
Yeah, a ton. Trillions. And
could we default on that?
Not if you have a printing press. It's very hard to do. So this is what has really been running, and it's going to hit everybody really hard, and I think it's going to hit us really bad in the next few years. And it's a direct consequence of all this printing, and it's this. The Federal Reserve, my statement about them is they're what I call a reverse Robin Hood organization. They print a lot of money. The people who get their hands on it first through something called the Cantillon effect, if you're closest to it, like if I'm the Federal Reserve, Luke, you're sitting there and I print $1 trillion, you get it first because you're the big bank in line. You then spend that on whatever you want, and by the time it trickles out to the rest of the people, steaks are, $18 a pound and whatever, right? Because of that, what happens is you find that as a little person, your bank account, it doesn't buy as much anymore. Your purchasing power went away. But where'd it go? That's the where to go. That's the mechanism, the mandrake mechanism, the sleight of hand. So everybody in the nation, all 320 million, lose a little bit of purchasing power from their bank accounts, but it's an economic axiom. It had to go somewhere. Where did it go? If you follow the story, it went to the billionaires, the trillionaires, the elites. They got all of that. So that's why I call the Federal Reserve the reverse Robin Hood, because they take from the many to give to the few.
And when you look at the purchasing...
And that makes people pissed off.
Oh, yeah, when they realize what's going on. Because sadly, a lot of people don't realize what's going on. And they're like, yes, government, give me my $600 or my $2,000 immediately. And they think it literally comes out of thin air. It doesn't. You pay for it in one way or another. Mm-hmm. Your children are going to be paying for it. And if you look at the purchasing power of the dollar from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you will be absolutely shocked to understand how fast the value of the dollar is going down. Even just recently, as you mentioned in the supermarket, I'm even seeing it, and it's scary stuff.
I remember when I was a kid and a candy bar cost 40 cents.
I know.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I used to buy penny candy.
Yeah.
That was
over
a
at
thing.
Alfredo's.
Yeah.
And then
Pennies
sell
mattered.
it for 5 cents in front of my house.
Yeah, it works.
Yep. Then they went up to 2 cents. I remember that. They went from 1 cent to 2 cents in like the course of a year, and then they were 5 cents.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.